church is this beautiful, messed up people, right? But that's the beauty of it. It's like this place where a bunch of morons get together and go, my gosh, I need the grace of Jesus in my life, and I do not have it together. That's why I'm here.
You've been down long enough, no more walking in shame, 'cause the way that he loves you isn't something you can change. You've been running in circles, but you can't hide from grace, 'cause the way that he loves you isn't something you can change. Just like Lazarus out of that grave, our God rewrites history. Jesus, you change everything when you pour your spirit out. Just like Silas singing with Paul, praise can break down prison walls. Jesus, you can have it all. Won't you pour your spirit out? Trust in his name, 'cause his burden is easy and he's perfect in his ways. You can run to the Father, there's no reason to wait, 'cause his arms have been open, hey! And that's not something you can change. Just like Lazarus out of that grave, our God rewrites history. Jesus, you change everything when you pour your spirit out. Just like Silas singing with Paul, praise can break down prison walls. Jesus, you can have it all. Won't you pour your spirit out? Just like Lazarus out of that grave, our God rewrites history. Jesus, you change everything when you pour your spirit out. Just like Silas singing with Paul, praise can break down prison walls. Jesus, you can have it all. Won't you pour your spirit out? Pour your spirit out. Pour your spirit out. We need you. Pour your spirit out. Pour your spirit out. Come and pour your spirit out. Pour your spirit out. Pour your spirit out. Come on, the Bible says all we have to do is ask tonight, church. Come on, let's do it. All we have to do is just ask, seek, knock, watch the door swing wide open. Roll back that stone, roll back that stone, roll back that stone, roll back that stone. 'Cause all we have to do is just ask, seek, knock, watch the door swing wide open. Roll back that stone, roll back that stone, roll back that stone, roll back that stone. All we have to do is just ask, seek, knock, watch the door swing wide open. I was crippled by fear, monthly panic attacks for 19 years. But the Lord gave me freedom as I sat in my chair. In a church I found healing at the end of a prayer. So what do you call that? You can try to explain, you can tell me I'm crazy, but I'm the one He changed. What do you call that? You can say it's not real. I used to think this was crazy, but now I'm the one He heals. Just like Lazarus out of that grave, our God rewrites history. Jesus, you change everything when you pour your Spirit out. Just like Silas singing with Paul, praise can break down prison walls. Jesus, you can have it all. Won't you pour your Spirit out? Just like Lazarus out of that grave, our God rewrites history. Jesus, you change everything when you pour your Spirit out. Just like Silas singing with Paul, praise can break down prison walls. Jesus, you can have it all. Won't you pour? Come on, just ask. You just ask, seek, knock, watch the door swing wide open. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. All we have to do is just ask, seek, knock, watch the door swing wide open. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. Ask, seek, knock, watch the door swing wide open. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. All we have to do is just ask, seek, knock, watch the door swing wide open. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone. Roll back that stone.
Hello. All right. Oh, Ray, I mean, he builds things up. You can't ever deliver on that. It's like, do that impression. It's like, you're not gonna laugh. All right, guys, we have so much to do. It's ridiculous. My name's Mark. If you haven't met me yet, I'm the Canadian Ray was talking about, and I'm one of the pastors around here. Really good to have you here. Matthew chapter 5 through 7. So if you got a Bible, Matthew 5 is where we're gonna be. It's the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is probably the most well-known part of the teaching of Jesus, and yet it's probably the least obeyed, right? Best known, least obeyed. Why would that be? Because it's super hard to do it, right? Jesus comes and he says crazy stuff, like everything that you think naturally about your life, everything you feel inside of you that you would naturally do, he goes, that's all wrong. Everything you think about God and sex and money and friendship and relationships, it's all backwards. Left is right, up is down. The people you thought were in are actually out. The people you thought they were out are actually in. And he just starts to blow everything up. And it's super hard because you're like, this is shocking to my system. This is gonna rock the entire way that I live my life. How am I supposed to live like this? Jesus comes along in the Sermon on the Mount and he says, if someone hits you on your cheek, turn to him the other one. That is not naturally what you wanna do. What do you wanna do if someone punches you in the, listen, I've been in 2 fights in my life. All right, one of them was with this guy named Kevin. He punched me in the face and I didn't go, oh, I'm gonna turn the other cheek. I slugged him in the face. And then he was super big, so he just punched me in the face many, many more times and then I was done. But the second fight I got in, I actually won. They slapped me and then I punched them, we rolled around a bit and then they were like, okay, it's good, it's good. And that was my cousin, Cheryl. So, true story. But the point is, man, Jesus is about to upend everything you think about your life. And this is what's crazy about it. He is going to tell you everything you thought was right, everything you thought was the right way to do it. He goes, no, you can't follow that way. There's a different way. My hope and prayer, honestly, is as we go through the Sermon on the Mount, we are doing this for 20 weeks. Andrew introduced it last week. My prayer is that it would light a fire and a revolution and a reformation in your life, in the life of our church, and in the life of our city. That is honestly my expectation. I remember being in Bible college and we did a study on the book of Galatians. And our professor got up and he said, listen guys, this is the book that lit a fire of the Reformation. This book changed all of society, Western civilization. It changed all of faith. Zwingli and Luther and Calvin, all these guys came out of there and they understood what the Bible, it was the book of Galatians that started that. And he said, maybe if you let it do the same to you, it can start a reformation in your life and in our school. And it did. It's the only reason I'm up here preaching and teaching right now, because the book of Galatians did this thing on me. I'm hoping and praying the same thing with the Sermon on the Mount for you. Because this is a thing where Jesus comes in, he says, guys, everything you thought about your life is actually wrong, and this is like Jesus revolution stuff, right? That's literally what this is. This is the alternative kingdom of Jesus, and this will change your life. It rocked my life when I was 19 years old. A guy came and told me about Jesus in woodworking class. I gave my life to Christ, and then I didn't know what to do. He left me and just said, okay, good luck. So what do? I opened up the book of Matthew, the first book of the New Testament. I looked for the red letters, because that means who's talking? Jesus. So I looked to the red letters, and the Sermon on the Mount is just 3 full chapters, 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew, of Jesus talking. And I would read stuff that was just so upside down and backwards. And he would say, if someone comes and asks you for your jacket, give them your t-shirt as well. I'm like, what? This is the craziest thing I've ever, this is a manifesto that I can't live by. This is crazy. And so someone would come up, I'd be smoking a joint or something. Hey, can I have a puff off that? I go, here's the whole baggie. Jesus wants you to have it, all right? That was before I was really knew what Christianity was about. I was just getting started. So the revolution is upon us. Jesus is going to say, we are the upside down people. We are the counter, what John Stott calls the Christian counterculture. We are the people who do not look or talk or think like any of the empire of the world that we live in. So even when it says stuff like Jesus, like look at this. We're not even halfway through the intro yet. Okay, so even when it's like he goes on a mountainside, we read that, we're like, that's so cute, he likes mountains. Guys, this is the revolution. This is the beginning of it. Because I'll tell you the one thing the Roman Empire didn't like, guys going up mountainsides, giving people an alternative vision of what life really is. That you're not supposed to worship Caesar, you're supposed to worship God. That when a Roman soldier comes and tells you to walk a mile, here's what I want you to do. What does he say? Walk 2. You think that's, just show them you're a good guy? No, that's gonna get that Roman guy in trouble. This is a revolution. You know when Jesus dies on a cross, they say he was crucified between 2, and the word is lestai, and we go, those guys must have been stealing purses in the marketplace. No. The Roman Empire didn't kill guys stealing purses. They killed revolutionaries. That's what the word lestai means. Jesus Christ dies because he keeps going up mountainsides, pulling everyone around, feeding them food that the empire is supposed to feed them, and starts to say, I want you to belong to my empire, which is what? The kingdom of heaven, not the kingdom of the world. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, well, what does that look like? What's the manifesto? And he goes away and he starts to teach them. And he doesn't stop for 3 whole chapters. No one interrupts this guy because they know he's getting serious. And so he starts to teach them amazing things. And the amazing thing about it is, this is what I love about it. Sermon on the Mount shows us that Christianity is more than just doctrine. It's how to live a life. Some of you think it's just about how you vote and what you think about the deity of Christ, and then you just move on with your life and you look like the world, you think like the world, you dress like the world, you talk like the world, your money does the same things in the world, and there's no revolution in your life. And yet the very center of the Sermon on the Mount, as Jesus says in chapter 5, verse 20, I need your righteousness to surpass that of the scribes and the Pharisees, or you don't get into the kingdom. What does that mean? That this is more than what you believe, guys. This is what you do with your life. This is how you actually live. And so, Martin Lloyd-Jones says this, the Sermon on the Mount is not saying live like this and you will become a Christian. That would be religion. The Sermon on the Mount is saying because you are a Christian, you live like this. That's the difference. We are the people who look, if we believe in Jesus, our whole life is different. I remember when I started dating Erin, I started dating her, all my friends were like, bro, are you sleeping with her? I'm like, no. What was her follow-up question? Why? Why? And I said, because I'm following Jesus, man, which means I just look different than you. And they're like, well, can I then? No. Why? Because she is a follower of Jesus. And everything about our life is gonna clash with how you think and what you live and what you think natural life is and what you think feelings should be and where you think life should go. And so you have to understand that Jesus is giving an alternative way, but he's saying, if you wanna know who the true people of God are, if you wanna know who the people going to heaven are in the present, I'm not gonna give you the way to get to heaven. I'm telling you who's already going there. You look around the world and you go, it's the people who look like this. And that's why it doesn't make any sense sometimes when Christians go to war against the culture that we live in. You got guys preaching sermons and just screaming at the culture. Why are you like this? Why are you like that? Why, oh, California, blah, blah, blah. Guys, do you know why California is the way it is? Because they don't know Jesus. So why are you talking to them like they should? The manifesto is, this is what someone who knows me looks like, not what pagans look like. Of course, if you don't know Jesus, you're gonna think like this, act like this, do this, and then you're screaming at a culture for not looking Christian. They don't know Christ. So why don't you start there? And then when they start to love and treasure Jesus above everything else, downstream, they start to look like this sermon and they start to say to themselves, okay, now, what does this look like? Okay, so that's a bit of the intro. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, here's the thing about the crowds. Jesus isn't happy leaving the crowds as the crowds. He wants to turn the crowds into the church. And I'm not happy standing up here as one of your pastors, leaving you as part of the crowd. I want you to move from crowd to church, meaning you might be here and like how many times I've talked to people, they're like, well, I come in and I'm interested in Christianity. Like I hang out in church, I go to church once a month. You know, I give a little money once in a while and I listen to the Christian radio. I know who Hillsong is. And then that's kind of it, right? Their relationship life, their marriage life, their work life, their money life, none of that follows it. And then they wonder why they're bored with Christianity. Because, I'll tell you why you're bored. Because that's not real Christianity. That's a hobby. And Christianity is a really bad hobby. Because you're stuck in two worlds. If you're looking for a hobby, go buy a boat, bro. Take up skiing. Don't pick up Christianity on the side and think this is an all-in kind of thing where it's like this has to be your whole life, or don't even mess with it because it will overtake you. And I remember we planted our church up in Vancouver in 2010, and we started to get some momentum, and people started to get really interested in Christianity, and we started to grow like hundreds of people per week more, and we're starting in this little gym, and then we moved to this performing arts center, and hundreds of people are showing up per week, coming to know Christ, getting baptized, and there was this momentum. So much so that I went out with a guy for lunch, and he sat me and I said, dude, I wanna get baptized. I said, okay, great, tell me your story. He's like, well, I don't believe any of what you believe. So what do you mean? He goes, well, I don't believe that Jesus is God. I don't believe that he's the only way to salvation. I don't believe in heaven and hell. I don't believe I need to believe in Christ. But I want to get baptized at your church. Why? See, here's why, guys. Because Jesus is a very compelling figure. And anytime there's a social momentum that happens, people pull into it like a gravitational pull. And what this guy wanted to do was get baptized because everyone else was. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not gonna baptize you. He said, what do you mean you're not gonna baptize me? I said, because I don't wanna give you a false sense of security that you actually know Jesus and you don't. He got swept up. And some of you right now, as you sit here, you are only swept up in the cultural ethos of Christianity. You don't actually know Jesus yet. And I don't want you to remain crowd, right? I remember there was I've had so many conversations with people like, hey man, I show up to your church. I just love coming to Bayside because I get the meat of the word. I'm like, man, that's awesome. So has your wallet moved to Bayside? What do you mean? And it's like, bro, I don't yet enjoy, but if you're actually in and you're actually a Christian, we got ministry to do. We got campuses growing. We got kids to reach and disciple. We got marriages to save, which all cost money, resources. We got to take our money and go, Jesus wants me to use my money for the kingdom. Look what Jesus does. And some of you are like, no, that's so offensive. Then don't come back. I don't care. We'll go from 5 services down to 4 and I can spend more time with my family. I don't get paid anymore because we do 5 services. Dude, let's go down to 2. It'll be legit. Why? You know why I said? Because Jesus is about to preach a sermon to thin the crowd. Because he's gonna put the standard up here and go, you can't just be a non-contributing zero who shows up and sucks resources and goes on with their life. You gotta be someone who goes, I'm taking a stand for the kingdom, which means every part about my life is going into the kingdom, everything. So Jesus tells sermons to mess people up. And he's like, okay, let's thin this crowd out. So what does he do? He sits down and he takes his disciples come to him and he began to teach them, begins to give them this manifesto. And he says this. Now, he said, blessed. Now, blessed, this is where we get, in your Bible, it's gonna say the Beatitudes. So that comes from the Latin phrase of this word. So the Greek word here is makarios, and the Latin phrase is beatitudio. So the Beatitudes, it's 8. There's 8 of them. We're gonna cover 3 of them today. And they're Jesus saying blessed, or one translation says happy are the poor in spirit. He's about to say, this is the way, and this is what I love about this. He's not saying like happy like the way you feel. He's going happy like as a condition of what God thinks of you. What is God's posture toward you? Originally he had wrath. That wrath went on Jesus. Now you've believed in Jesus and he looks at you now as makarios, as you are a blessed one. You are part of the kingdom. And what I love about that and why the word happy is great is because it's also Christianity is the only way to get true joy in this world. And what happens is some of you grew up in a version of Christianity that was about just your begrudging submission. It was just about, you just kind of, I gotta follow God because he's gonna kill me, right? He's gonna hurt me. He's gonna do something bad. If I don't follow him, I'm gonna get cancer. Some of you, honestly, that's what goes on in the psychology of your brain. And it's not like when you think of picture pure joy, I'm sure the picture that doesn't come up in your brain is a Christian. Christians are sometimes mopey, they're down, they're mean, they're screaming at people, they're judgmental, all these things. And Jesus is like, man, one of the great things of life is I want to give you the solution to your happiness. And it's not what you think it is, which is beautiful because here's the thing. Do you know that nothing motivates you more than your own happiness? Everything you do in your life is based on you trying to get makarios, blessedness, happiness. The clothes you wear, the food you eat, every decision you make, the person you married, I can guarantee the day you asked your wife to marry you, you weren't down on that knee going, I'm gonna bear my cross. All right, woman, can you marry me, please? This is gonna be a disaster. You were jacked. And you weren't answering yes in monotone. Yep. Guess I gotta choose someone. You were happy, right? You were happy. That is the greatest motivating factor of your life. And what Jesus is saying is, I got a way for you to be happy that is not tied to your circumstances in life. I got a way for you to be truly happy beyond anything that you could ever imagine. These are the things that motivate us. Our own happiness. How many of you are going to the Taylor Swift concert in July? All right, yeah, a couple cool people. All right, so my girls stayed away till 2 o'clock in the morning trying to get those tickets. What were they driven by? They're gonna experience joy, man. They're gonna go there and sing those songs, and they're gonna, some of you get your joy. That's just why some of you are obsessed with sports. You're constantly watching sports all the time. Why? Because it stimulates you. It's entertainment, it's pleasure. It's the reason movies make $1 billion in a weekend. All of these things are motivating factors, but if you go after it as the end point to your joy, you will be let down. You will be crushed because you didn't find it with Jesus. You found it in circumstances. You found it in your family. I remember I did a sermon series on marriage and relationships, and I was talking about the importance of sex. We did a similar thing a couple weeks ago. This was a couple years ago, and I was talking about, God put them in the garden naked, and he wants joy out of your life, and all that. And this couple walks up to me, and the wife's like, look, he's been trying to get me to have another child because he thinks that's the way we're gonna find true joy. And I wasn't gonna do it. We already have 2, I'm done. And he says, come on, I want another one, I want another one. So fine, she's like, you know what, after that sermon, you inspired me, we're gonna do it. And so literally they came up 2 years later and they introduced me to this kid. It's just weird, because now I like feel a weird connection to the kid, and I'm like, what? And they're like, hi, daddy, no. So it's like a weird dynamic. But the thing is this guy was looking to find joy by just having another kid. And some of you, that's what you're after. If I could just get the promotion, if I could just be successful, so I could just raise good kids, if I could just have a good family, then I'd be makarios, then I'd be blessed, then I'd be happy. And Jesus is gonna undercut all of that and say, no, you don't understand. That stuff will always leave you. And so when we were in Israel in November, it was great. Ray, on the place where Jesus did the Sermon on the Mount, we were all up there, and he did this sermon, and he did the 8 Beatitudes, and he did happy are the, and then all these great H words. And the 3 he did for the 3 we're gonna cover, happy are the humble, happy are the hurting, which we're gonna talk about, and then happy are the harnessed, meaning the meek. And I remember after he did that, I was like, man, I don't even want to do any more Devos. This guy, this was just incredible, the way he took us through the meaning of happiness and how it's connected to humility and being hard, all of these things. And it was an incredible reality. And then I pictured Jesus doing it on the slopes, and there's water behind him. People say it was one of the great natural amphitheaters where this was. He's got water behind him, he's got a big hill, and he's just going. And he starts to teach. And he says, you want blessedness? You want covenant, you want to understand true happiness in your life? I'm going to tell you how to get it. So what does he do? He says, first, the poor in spirit. This is the way into the kingdom of God, and this is who the truly blessed are. The poor in spirit. Now here's the thing, our culture, you go back to ancient culture. You know who they loved? You know who they worshiped? Orators, public speakers. Right? Like we love basketball players and actors and celebrities, right? Those things are easy. Public speaking, that's legit. All right, so they loved the public speakers. They worshiped the celebrity speakers, the cool people. That was how ancient Greco-Roman culture was. Every culture has the people it worships. Our culture loves the celebrities, the rich people, the people in the magazines. And here's what Jesus has said. You know who the blessed are? The poor in spirit, man. Not the beautiful people, not the successful people, not the cool people, not the people in the magazines, not the cool public speakers, not the basketball players. The poor in spirit. The people who come to the end of themselves and go, I'm a loser, man. In fact, the word he uses for poor, it's not even the normal word for poor in the Greek. There's a word for poor like you don't have any money. He uses a word for poor here, which means I hide my face and beg. Is that you? I'm talking about in spirit, is that you? Meaning, before God, do you recognize you have complete poverty? You have nothing to offer him. You know that. So all of you who've grown up in the church thinking, but I'm gonna be a good person. I'm not gonna watch rated R movies. I'm gonna make sure I do my daily, I'm gonna behavior modification, and then God will save me. And he goes, you completely missed it. You have nothing to offer him. Zero. You are poor. You are a beggar. Hoping that God gives you grace, lets you wake up tomorrow morning. I was saying this, we were talking before the service. The fact that we're alive right now, every morning you wake up, you just be like, ah! He let me get up. I'm completely dependent on him for everything. Are you proud? Are you arrogant? Are you too cool? A while ago, here's a picture that jumped off when I was studying. So a while ago, my kids were young. I took them over for my wife was away. I took them over to my buddy's house for a sleepover. So it was me and him. Ladies were away, his kids, my kids. We're sitting there. My 3 daughters, I think my youngest was 4. And they brought me a problem. And I mean, I'm used to running very complex organizations. I got a lot of stuff going on. You know, I read the greats. I read theology. Wrote a master's thesis on Romans 9-11. I'm running an organization, millions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. And then this 4-year-old walks up to me and goes, you gotta understand, Hayden did this, Hayden did that, pretzel. And my mind went blank. I have no troubleshooting ability when it comes to my 4-year-old and her pretzel problems, 0. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, ah. And so I just did what I do when I get in those scenarios. Okay, we're going home. That's my solution. I'm going home, man. I can't solve the complexity of this. Where's your mom? I'm so confused on what to do here. That's the picture of poverty in spirit. I got nothing to offer. My Dostoevsky quote won't work. My complex way that organizations won't work, barbarian to bureaucrat, the life cycle of nothing is gonna work. Pretzel. I have nothing to offer. I feel helpless before the situation. That's how we have to feel toward God. There is a bankruptcy of spirit, John Stott calls it. No one gets into the kingdom who is not poor in spirit. I heard a story the other day. One of our pastors was telling it during sermon prep. I thought it was powerful. He said he was on a vacation with some friends, and there was a guy, one of their buddies started really struggling out in the water, started drowning. So they ran up to the lifeguard and they said, hey, our buddy's drowning. And the lifeguard just sat there and stared at him. And they're like, bro, he's drowning. And he sat there and he stared and he stared and he stared until finally he just got tired of flailing and he just went flat and he's like laying, and then the lifeguard jumped out of his chair and he ran, he grabbed him, he pulled him up and did CPR, came back, and they're like, bro, why did you wait? And he said, because I needed to wait for him to stop trying to save himself before I could save him. Because he'd take me down with him. That's the way salvation works, man. You are Lazarus in a tomb, and your hope is that Jesus comes to you and goes, get up. And if you are here interested at all in Christianity, that's the Spirit of God taking you from a place of poverty and spirit and going, I want to give you life. Blessed are the poor in spirit. This is where the whole sermon begins, because this is where salvation begins. The rest of the Sermon on the Mount makes no sense unless you enter it with absolute humility. Spiritual humility. You have nothing to bring to the table. And he says, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Those are the people who get into heaven. Okay, then the second one. Blessed are those who, what? Mourn. Blessed are the people whose life right now kind of sucks. How's your life? Money in the bank, good house, little boat on the side, good health, good marriage, good kids. You construct a life for yourself that is too perfect. Be careful, because you'll never want to fly to him. Blessed are those who mourn, man. Blessed are those who feel the pain of the world. I went and did a hospital visit a short time ago. A woman was dying in the hospital. Dying. Cancer. Tried everything. 2 or 3 young kids. Let me ask you a question. In the economy of the world, how could I ever walk into that hospital bed and say she's blessed? I can't. She's losing. She's sick. She's dying. It's over. She has nothing to offer. Her body is giving out. She is facing the worst thing, the thing that all the stories are about. The thing philosophy was born to do, the thing that art was born to tap into for you, the ultimate question, death. It's the only thing that drives your life other than happiness. It's the opposite. You think about it constantly. And she was there at the door. Breath was going, the veil was thin. And how can I walk in and go, you are, by the way, blessed, because on every version of this world, on this side of the veil, she was losing. But not in the economy of God, she wasn't. She was makarios. Why? Because Philippians 1 says to die is what? Gain. How is that even possible? How could dying be gain? Because guys, things are not as they seem. There is a world that will be vastly different than this one. And in the eyes of the world, the people who are mourning are the people who look like they're losing, but they're not losing. They're actually it's like this is the upside down pizza. So C.S. Lewis wrote this book called The Screwtape Letters years ago. Nephew demon writing to an uncle demon. Nephew demon has been assigned to a new Christian, and he's got to try to get his faith apart from him. And so he writes to the uncle demon, he says, good news, the bombs are dropping all over London, which means our guy, he's gonna die soon. He's a new Christian. He's only been a Christian for a year. It's gonna be fantastic, uncle. He's gonna be dead soon. And the uncle demon writes back and goes, you idiot. We don't want him to die, because if he dies now, we lose him to God. I want him to stay alive as long as possible. Give him a good life. Give him some money. Make him start to care about his reputation. Make sure he gets friends, because in that moment, here's what he's gonna do. He's gonna knit his soul to the world, and then we've got him. He will walk away from God in a second, because he's not a mourner anymore. He's a celebrator. He's got it good. He doesn't know what it means to come to the end of himself. And that's the position we want him in. And we go, we gotta dodge the bombs, because the worst thing that could ever happen to us in our perspective is to die. And God goes, no, guys, it's okay. It's okay. You can mourn, because you know what's gonna happen to those who mourn? The best thing in the world. You will be comforted. Guys, I want to be dead honest with you. There is going to come a day, just remember me saying this, there is going to come a day in your life when this verse might be all you have. You will be in that hospital bed. Your family will be not in the room because it'll be 2:00 in the morning. You will be alone. You will be scared. And all you're gonna have is this verse that, okay, I can do this because I will be comforted. How are you gonna be comforted? You realize this is the ultimate thing. Like you watch, so I remember when I was a kid, we went up to this cabin and we were vacationing with our cousins and my brother. We went up there and we went down swimming, and we jumped in and I went underneath this dock, and the dock had a bunch of like nails and wood hanging out, and I got caught under there. I couldn't get back up. And so my two cousins and my brother ran up to tell my parents that I was drowning. I fought my way out of this thing, and I got up and they were gone. So I was like, okay, crazy. So I ran up to the cabin to find my family. Well, while I was running up, they were running down the other side. So they come down the other side. I'm in their house drying off. Just, oh man, I gotta tell my family I'm not dead. Where did they go? I don't understand. And then I look out and they're all down there like, they're like, oh. So I run down, and as I'm running down, everyone's walking back up to the cabin, which is kind of weird that it happened that quick. It was like, he's dead, want some lunch? Like they just kind of, it's very bizarre. Like they went through all the stages of grief in like 2 minutes, and then Mark's dead, moving on. So I like ran, I remember running down, and I see my mom, and she's like, oh, and she just grabs me, and I grabbed her, and like you think of all these moments, guys, think, like, you guys seen Saving Private Ryan? You know that war movie, and they're sitting on Omaha Beach, and these young 20-year-old guys have their guts sitting beside them on the beach because they've been blown up and they're almost dying. And what are they crying out? What are they saying? I want my mom. I want my mom. Why? Because at the end of the day, what do we want? We want to be comforted. We want a mother or a father to wrap their arms around us and go, it's okay, kid. This is why I love my ages of my kid. They're almost at that age where they don't need me anymore, but they're still kind of there. Like if they get scared at night, then they'll come in and give me a snuggle. So sometimes I'll be like, brrr, and then it's going to put a ski mask on. Hey kid, what's going on? Because ultimately, when you're in suffering, and let me just tell you something, if everything's good right now and you're young and the world's ahead of you and you can't connect with this and you're bored at this point, guys, just give it time. Just give it time and you will be a mourner. And how you deal with your mourning and how you feel, because here's what Christianity gives you. It goes, you get a father who wraps his arms around you. You get a father who goes, I'm gonna give you a new world. Even when this world's over and the cancer wins and the tumor wins and the car crash wins, whatever it is, guys, there's a new world coming. Amen. New heaven, new earth, resurrection, amazing things. There is life beyond this world, and that's the thing that you're gonna hold on to. Do you realize there's not one verse in the Bible where Jesus laughs? I'm not saying he wasn't a laugher. I'm pretty sure he was, because he's talking about joy. I'm pretty sure he made fun of those dudes a ton and told jokes. But there's not one verse in the Bible where he laughs. But you know what there's a lot of verses of? Him crying. He mourns a lot. He weeps over Jerusalem. He weeps when his friend Lazarus dies. He's a weeper, man. You know why he's a weeper? Because he's connected to the reality of the world, and some of you are not. You are clueless of why you should mourn right now, because the boat's too nice, and the house is too nice, and the marriage is too good. And when you walk through a city, you read Paul, when he goes to Athens, it says his spirit was provoked within him. You know what he didn't do? He didn't walk through Athens and go, whoa, what great statues. Let's get the nice hotel. Man, Athens was awesome. He goes, it's breaking my heart, the idolatry here. I just went to Vegas this past week for a pastor's retreat. I know that sounds like a total oxymoron, but you could have made a movie out of this thing. But anyways, there was 8 pastors, and they were meeting one of the big pastors in Vegas and talking about strategy and leadership and all that. So I fly into Vegas, and the juxtaposition of like I bring my wife and we come through the airport, and it's the flashy lights, the casinos and the fun and the shows, and Donny Osmond's still alive. Didn't know that. So these guys just keep going, man. And we're walking through the airport. It's flashy, it's fun. Come see the show, do the lights, hit the thing. And then there's this poster of a 12-year-old girl, and it says, don't buy her though, because we are against trafficking in Vegas. Wow. That's why you mourn. You go to Orange County and you take selfies. Hey, look at me in the boat. Hey, look at me in the beach. Look at me in my beach bod. Look at me in my dad bod. Look at me and my bros. And you miss it. The trafficking, the pain. You ever sit around when you're in the midst of the golf game and go, what's going on with Haiti though? Can we help this place? Why is there so much trafficking in Sacramento? Should we do something about it, Bob? Do you mourn? Does your heart ever break? That's why I love being part of this church, man, because we do not have our head in the sand. We want to move on this stuff. We want to help change the world. We will be comforted. You know, there's that scene in Lord of the Rings. You know you can't get through a sermon without a Lord of the Rings reference. At Return of the King and the last one, and little Pippin is sitting there with Gandalf, and he's like, we're going to die right now. And there's a big troll, and he's got this, and he's pounding down this door, and he's like, we're going to die. We're going to die. Gandalf looks and he goes, die. Death is just another way. And he's like, well, what is it like? Because Gandalf has already died, and he's come back. And he says these beautiful words. The gray rain curtain of this world rolls back, and all turns to silver glass, and then you see it. And you hear like the music in the background. White shores and beyond. A far green country under a swift sunrise. Some of you walked in here and you think there's death and nothing. And Jesus goes, there's death, then something. And if you know me, it means pure comfort. It means pure joy. Now, I will very quickly do the last one. I had Ray's talking about this sermon I preached at Village. I had all the time in the world there. I could do whatever I wanted. I was the boss. Now as I come in on your time and fill in those fill-ins. That's Andrew's voice, by the way, not Ray's. So, blessed are the meek. Pretty big word, and I just have to be super quick. So meek does not mean weak. Meek means the vulnerable ones who are willing to lead with a limp so that other people can be freed up. Are you so proudful that you never let anybody in? You ever been to a job interview and gone, I'll tell you what, my last job, I sucked. I showed up late and just got fired, to be dead honest with you. Anyway. The meek ones are the ones that aren't so proud. So, 2 pictures and then I'll pray for you. I planted this church in 2010 and I have Tourette syndrome, and so I said, this isn't gonna work. It's all these perfect people and 16 people in my house, and we launched this church, 162 people there. And I was just preaching the Bible, and all these people come to know Jesus. And I remember the pastor that mentored me said, or there's a flip side to that. It could be that they're gonna see in your mental illness and your challenges themselves, and you're gonna give them permission to not be perfect people. And in giving them permission, you're gonna save them. And that's what happened over and over and over and over and over again. I would get up and try to be, that's what this is. It's the vulnerability to not be perfect that lets people in. Remember I told this one story, one sermon years ago, and I had this obsessive compulsive idea that if I tapped things a certain amount of times, then people would get sick. And so I had to tap it and this and do all these little things. And I shared that story, and then a lady walked up to me in the park, and she's bawling. And she just said the next day, she said, I've lived my whole life like this, 25 years. I'll be sitting in my house and I'll be folding laundry, and I'll think if that corner doesn't hit that corner, that means my husband's gonna die in a car accident. And if I don't touch that thing 3 times, my kids are gonna die, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I never knew one other person in my life that ever thought like that until you shared that from a stage in front of thousands of people. And she's bawling and she's going, man, I am free now. Your meekness Your vulnerability, your leading with a limp is the thing that's gonna reach the world. Your brokenness. You realize that Christianity is the only, you know why so many people become Christians and it's usually the poor and the marginalized? Because Christianity is the only religion where the guy in the middle suffered. He suffered. And every human being can connect to that. What we can't connect to is the God who never gets touched by anything because he's meek. And what will happen to them? Oh, I wish I could give you 20 minutes on this, but I gotta pray. They'll inherit the earth. The future is not a disembodied spirit world where we all float around like Casper the Ghost and sing songs for billions of years. We get to come back to a renewed heaven and a renewed earth and a physical life again that is better than anything you ever could have imagined, in which Jesus Christ's resurrected body is the prototype for that re-embodied reality. But we will truly feel delight and pleasure forevermore. True happiness in a way you never could have imagined. So Jesus, you said these words to completely change the way that we think about our life, about how we find happiness and how we find joy and what we put our faith in and what we put our trust in. And you upend so much of what we naturally think in our minds of how to find those things. And so I just pray in this moment for the people who don't know you, that they would come to believe in you right now and go, okay, I have a poverty of spirit in which I am offering nothing but the record of Jesus in my place. And that we would be mourners in touch with the brokenness of ourselves and the world around us, and meek, vulnerable people who let people in so they can know the joy of knowing you. This is the beginning of the greatest sermon ever preached. My hope and prayer for our congregation is that the work that it does on us will change us to the core of our being and thus change the world around us. In Jesus' great name we pray. Amen. Hey guys, Pastor Mark here, one of the senior pastors around here. So glad that you are actually part of Bayside Online. You really are part of our family. We have grown over the last couple of years online a ton, and we really do consider you as part of our church family. So what that means is make sure you subscribe and share this. It's great. But also get in a community group. Start watching the Bible study. Start being engaged. Even give. One of the ways that we can actually do online church and have this global community and even do the ministry of our campuses is by people partnering with us in the gospel, as Paul talks about in Philippians chapter 1. And that means by your resources, financially. There are people all over the world getting blessed through what we do at Bayside. And so obviously part of that is giving and using and stewarding that for the glory of God. So we're super thankful if you do that. We'd love you to start doing that, and just super thankful you're part of our church. So glad you're with us. Make sure that you let us know you're watching and part of this, because we want to get in touch with you and thank you and serve you any way we can. Anyway, thanks guys, and we will see you next week.